Welcome to our video on doctoral education. We are members of the Doctoral Education Subcommittee from the American Art Therapy Association. And we are here to talk about various points that we hope will excite and inspire you about doctoral education. First, we want to introduce ourselves. I'm Nancy Gerber. I'm the chair of the Doctoral Education Subcommittee.
And I
Danielle?
can go. I'm Dr. Danielle Chen. I recently graduated. I was actually the student member on this committee. So I'm guessing now that I'm a part of the committee in a different way, but I'm excited to contribute and to talk through some of the experiences of just even having a PhD with art therapy. So it's exciting to be here.
Hi, I'm Michelle Fornash. I'm a music therapist, so I'm an interloper here in some ways, but I'm on this committee because I run the PhD program in expressive therapies at Lesley University, and we have lots of art therapy students in our program as well as the other modalities. And I've been part of this group for a couple of years now and really enjoying having the opportunity to talk about doctoral education with other faculty and former students, now colleagues.
Thanks, Michelle and Danielle. First of all, Michelle, it's so great to have you on this committee. We really appreciate all of your input from your perspective. And Danielle, congratulations, Dr. Chen. Great to have you. I mean,
Thank
you
you.
can really speak to fresh reflections on what it's like to go through the process of doctoral education. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about and begin, we're going to talk about a number of different topics. We want to describe and define doctoral education for you a little bit, talk a little bit about requirements and aptitudes for admission, talk a little bit about the journey. That's what Danielle has just completed, being on the journey as a doctoral student, kinds of interactions you have with faculty and peers, and most importantly, the necessity of doctoral education for our field, because we do need the research and we need the researchers to help us sustain and grow our field. So what if we talk about, for starters, describing doctoral education from maybe perspectives of students and faculty, Danielle and Michelle.
Yes. Well, I could jump right in. It's
Sure you
it's been
can.
right. So it has been just such an inspiration, even in the beginning of even thinking about an art therapy doctorate. It was so exciting, and um, knowing that there's so much to do in the space of an art therapy doctorate. So when I came in, I had this like conception of like, oh, I'm gonna have to, have a lab coat on, and it's gonna be a controlled group and this and that. And so coming into the program and really learning about art-based research and all these different things, it even helped change my view of what I could do in art therapy in a doctoral program. So I think that was amazing too, of being able to be in a program that not only taught you, like, because I know that I came from FSU and there was a background in art education. So it was also eye-opening, like, oh, wait, different PhD programs or doctoral programs are going to look different. So I knew that, like, I did hear about Lesley University, and I always was like, wow, that's the expressive arts. So I was always so enamored with like, oh, I wonder how they get to do things too. And along the way, I got to meet so many art therapists and so many people that were either from Lesley or all these different other like Dominican and different campuses. And so it was just invigorating too, to be like, wow, there's other people like me on this journey. And then hearing their research and how they've come to pick their topics was out like, it was so eye-opening that we could do so much. Because of course, coming in, I had my own, like, okay, I'm going to research this. I work with a lot of kids because I'm a marriage and family therapist first. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to work with kids. And I used to work with a lot of kids with autism. So I'll kind of hone in on that and do art therapy in that space. But along the journey, I was able to be like, wait, I can actually change things. I could do something that kind of breaks the mold too in research, of not just going down a pipeline, but like what's the field needing? and kind of asking those questions along the way too, of like, what is my real passion? And kind of going through the doctoral journey of like, what am I doing, or what am I doing this for? You have this like rabbit hole you go down. And I know that for y'all, it's like, it's great that as faculty, because I know I had Nancy there too to help, like, okay, well, let's hone this in too, because you could just go and start looking at anything and everything. So it
Yeah.
also is good to have that faculty kind of hone you in too with their own expertises, and how they can even have, because I know, Michelle, you're a music therapist. So it's also like seeing how your faculty bring different subjects or different other thoughts to the, like when you're kind of creating your committee. And I know I jumped around a lot, but I think that it's a very
That's doctoral education, right?
right.
It's
You
not
come in and you're
always a
not.
straight line, right? It's a zigzag.
Yes. And having faculty that know life happens, so like along the way, it's not that you're just in a little vacuum doing this research. Life is happening around you, and you're in the context of that too.
Well, I like what you said about it's kind of like I think sometimes there are preconceptions that people have about doctoral education, like you need to know what your research is going to be. But that's just not true. That's a fallacy, because hopefully the education helps you learn about what your true passion is along the way. What do you think, Michelle?
I would totally agree with that, Nancy. And I would think I was really resonating with your comment, Danielle, about the rabbit hole. And that is such an important part of the process, is to allow a certain amount, allow yourself to go down various rabbit holes and go, oh, I could do this, or I could think about this, I could do this. And then you come out of that and you go, what, where was I? And then stitch it together with other rabbit holes you've been down to. And so it's such a nonlinear process, and it's such a, this is why I think who you have as an advisor or chair is so important, because they can pull you out of a rabbit hole or put you down one as a way of helping you move forward. And it's not linear. It's just not. Um, and it's a balance. It's such a balance. And Danielle, you made another really amazing point. So many of our students are youngish in the 20 to 30 to 40 range, and balancing that family life thing is really also very important about how much do you give to this, and those are things I feel like as faculty we're able to support you in doing, because we don't want to limit anybody from any group of people from pursuing doctoral education because they are trying to build a family, trying to get married, trying to do any of that those are not barriers. Those
Yeah.
are things we negotiate.
Oh, beautiful. And Danielle did that, got married and had a baby.
Case in point.
Yes. But I think it goes back to, yeah, I had these stereotypes of what research was, and I really got to challenge those, because I did think like, oh, I can't have life events happen during this process. Like I have to be fully invested and have to really like pour all my time. Like I cannot do these other things. And it was like, my faculty's like, what, when did we ever say that? Like, no, like they were super happy to hear about all these different things in my life. And that was really important to me too, for faculty to understand and to be able to say, you know what, we're here to support you in however way we need to. So let's navigate it, negotiate, and also be realistic. Because I think that was hard too, of like, sometimes you do have to slow down because you are trying to work as an instructor at the time too, trying to be a TA or a GA. Like you're doing all these different things too, along with the PhD. So
Well, and I will say that I think the model of the original PhD was focused on men, white men in particular, and it was they could walk away from their families, and their spouse was supposed to take care of everything, and that's not true anymore. And I think we have more and more women pursuing PhDs and women of color pursuing PhDs, and I think it's because we have recognized that we have to support people's lives, and that we're not in the hard sciences. And not that we don't do quantitative research, not that we don't do hard science, we do, but the whole culture of it and the whole aesthetic of it is radically different than what was happening, 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
That's an
Yes.
excellent point, Michelle. It's really an excellent point. And I wonder if that could take us into talking about kind of the different kinds of doctoral programs that there are in general and also in our field. So, I mean, I think there's also people typically think of the doctoral as the PhD, but that's only one kind of doctorate. And there are others that people might choose based on their personal career goals or interests or passions that they want to fulfill. And so in our field, we have what, 5 different programs, I think, and they all have different, some of them have different kinds of degrees, and they all have different kinds of programs. So I think it's important to know that if you're thinking about doctoral education, because then you might want to explore those different programs and different approaches, different degree types to see what best suits you. I don't know if Michelle, you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Well, I think that's important to look at. I mean, my degree is actually a DA, a Doctor of Arts, which was the wrong degree that NYU chose because I did regular research, but it opened things up. It gives people, so in music therapy anyway, or in music in general, a DA for a dissertation, you could write a composition and have it performed, and that would be your dissertation. I don't know how that looks in art therapy, but I know in art therapy there's a DAT, a Doctor of Art Therapy, which I think is much more focused clinically. Am I right?
That actually is not, that program
Oh,
closed, but
okay.
it was a more of what they call practice doctorate, like a practice-based doctorate. So it's almost like the PsyD, the
Yeah.
PsyD, which is a practice-based doctorate in psychology, and the DAT, I believe, was kind of modeled after that.
But I think the PhD, which Leslie University offers the PhD, I think research is the only way to advance our field. That is really got to be the cornerstone of how we communicate with the world at large, because people understand PhD. They don't understand these other degrees that well, honestly. And I think research, quantitative, qualitative, arts-based, the whole spectrum is what we need to embrace to advance our field. And that's what a PhD program focuses on, is giving students research skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that is the reason for when I developed the program at Drexel University, and Michelle was actually one of our site visitors for that program. That was the goal, just to develop a program that would start generating research for actually music therapy, art therapy, and dance therapy. That was our program. And but I have to say that I think some of the other more annotated degrees do have a research component. It's just not as rigorous in some cases. So yeah.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I still think that research is the way to move us forward. And I embrace the whole spectrum of research as
Yeah.
an organized way of looking at things, systematic way of looking at something.
And I think that's important. I think Danielle alluded to that earlier, that research, we've all been kind of brainwashed, I think, to think of research in one way. And that's you're going to do an experiment and you're going to do a pre-test, an intervention, a post-test, and you're going to calculate the results statistically and evaluate the results as such. And that is indeed one form of very important research. But we, as creative arts therapists, we have to look at the kind of knowledge we're interested in learning about and align the research method with that. So for me, as an art therapist, you can't measure meaning. So I don't want someone measuring a drawing, because that destroys the very nature of it. And so that kind of research has to be described in some way rather.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Nancy, you're a leader clearly in the arts-based research area with your arts-based research consortium and all of that. And I think, you're a real model of what can be done in arts-based research. And so I think that's really, really important.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think you're right that I hope most in the creative arts therapies, because we're creative thinkers, we have to have a range of approaches and we have to figure out which approach best suits what we want to learn. And that doesn't mean everything has to be an experiment. No, it doesn't have to be quantified. Can be described, it can be illustrated, it can be composed. I mean, those kinds of research are really important, and the more that we educate people about that, the better off we'll be. So
Yeah. I would say that, one of the things I do with the doc students that I work with is to talk about what is your research question? What is it you want to know? Because that drives the kind of research you do. And people often get stuck in effectiveness. And sometimes it's a good thing to be in that. And sometimes it's not, so that's not really what their question is. And they can't figure out how to ask their question because we haven't taught the younger generations about qualitative or arts-based. And so everybody thinks they have to come in with a hypothesis and, and they don't. And I'm a firm believer in you have to settle on your research question, and that drives your method, that drives the kind of research you do. And to just help expand people's understanding of, yes, this counts as research, this counts as research, this counts as research. Because I think your point, Danielle, about thinking you were going to have to wear a white coat and have a control group is what a lot of people come in with, and that's how they think. And it's like, okay, there are other ways, other perspectives, there's other ways to think.
yeah, and that's so true. And we're talking earlier about well, before we started recording, we were having a conversation about more inclusive and social justice approaches to our fields and to research. And I think part of that is the inclusivity of different methods, that so many of these methods have been marginalized, and qualitative and arts-based have been marginalized and dismissed. And so I think that that's another part of that kind of social justice and equity movement, is to really elevate all forms of research as the same, and that they are all important. They all can be rigorous, but they just look at different things. That's all.
And I think a lot of research that happened in the past has also supported the oppressive structures in our society. And I think it's part of our job. Okay, so we're already marginalized in a sense as the art therapy. So rather than trying to continue the oppressive practices of research, we have this great opportunity to look at anti-oppressive practices in research and to really try to guide our students into, understanding their own sociocultural perspective, what they bring, the biases they bring, and helping them understand, the systems of oppression, and help them create research that gets outside of that or focuses on that so that we can begin to see those practices and dismantle them to some extent.